All right, so today we're diving into some pretty intense discussions happening in the Ambazonian diaspora community.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and these are online discussions, so there's a lot of back and forth. But the topic here is how they can best support their fight for independence from Cameroon.
Yeah, that's a big question.
It is a big question, and I think it's fascinating to see how they're trying to wrestle with this while they're in the middle of this movement for independence.
Absolutely. It really highlights, the challenges of collective action, right?
Yes.
Especially when the stakes are so high.
Absolutely. And just for anyone who might not be familiar with this conflict, Ambazonia is a self-declared independent state that's seeking to separate from Cameroon.
Right.
And this discussion is all about how those living abroad, the diaspora, can best support that movement.
Right. And there are a lot of strong opinions on this.
There are a lot of strong opinions.
Yeah.
So one of the loudest voices calling for change is a guy named Derek.
Yeah.
And he is clearly frustrated with how things have been done in the past.
Mm. He's very vocal about that.
Yeah, and he's pushing for a much more structured approach to organizing the diaspora.
Yeah. He even says at one point that just having all these scattered groups isn't enough anymore.
So what does he want to see happen?
So Derek is really all about accountability.
Okay.
He believes that organized diaspora communities can create a system where everyone is answerable for their actions.
I see.
And that way, it's harder for individuals to kind of hijack the movement for their own personal gain.
So it's like checks and balances.
Exactly. Checks and balances to make sure everyone's working towards the same goal and, nobody's going rogue.
That makes sense. And I can see why he feels strongly about that, especially if he's seen that happen in the past.
Oh, yeah. He brings up past instances where he felt like things weren't done properly.
So he's speaking from experience.
Absolutely.
So how does he envision this actually working in practice?
So he gives some concrete examples. He talks about, imagine Ambazonians abroad who are facing legal issues.
Okay.
Or they need help with documentation, Right. Derek says that organized communities could pool their resources, bring in experts, and really make a difference on a practical level.
So it's about providing real, tangible support.
Exactly.
Not just talking about the big picture, but actually helping people on the ground.
Right. And it goes beyond just the accountability within the movement itself. It's about providing real help to people who need it.
And that's something everyone can get behind.
Right.
But he takes it even further than that, right?
Oh, yeah. He sees these organized communities as a way to amplify the Ambazonian voice on the international stage.
So he's thinking globally.
He is. He's thinking big picture.
So he's saying a unified front can counter Cameroon's influence and advocate for Ambazonian independence more powerfully than just individuals can.
Exactly. He thinks that having a unified front will allow them to actually advocate for themselves on the world stage much more effectively.
That makes sense. I mean, there's strength in numbers.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm guessing not everyone agrees with his vision.
You guessed right.
Okay, so who are we hearing from on the other side of this debate?
Well, one of the other prominent voices in this discussion is Dr. Marcelius Atonga.
Okay, and what's his take?
He favors sticking with the existing structure, which is called the LGA framework, which stands for Local Government Area.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that. What is the LGA framework?
Essentially, it's Ambazonians grouping themselves based on their villages of origin back in Ambazonia.
Oh, interesting.
So even if they're living all over the world now, they still identify with their local community back home.
I see. So it's about maintaining those connections to home.
Exactly.
Okay, but how does that translate to actually supporting the movement?
Well, Dr. Atonga argues that this system has a track record of success, that it fosters unity and it prevents fragmentation.
Okay, but is it adaptable to a global diaspora?
That's a good question, and that's one of the things that Derek challenges.
So Derek doesn't think that the LGA is the right approach.
Well, he acknowledges that it's had some successes, but he questions whether a system that works within Ambazonia can be easily translated to a diaspora spread across, different countries with different legal systems.
So it's like trying to apply a local solution to a global problem.
Exactly.
But is it just about practicality, or does Derek have other concerns with the LGA?
Well, he also brings up instances where he felt like things weren't handled as openly as they should have been.
So he's questioning the transparency and accountability of the LGA.
He is, and he brings up some, specific situations from the past where he felt like there wasn't enough transparency.
So even if it has a good track record, he's saying it's not perfect.
Exactly, and this is where the debate gets really interesting.
Okay.
You see this tension between wanting to maintain that sense of unity and tradition with the LGA,
right,
but also acknowledging the need for change and adaptation.
It's like trying to figure out how to build a bridge to the future while still standing on the foundations of the past.
Exactly. And it's something that a lot of movements grapple with, right?
Yeah.
How to balance the old with the new.
It makes you wonder, how do you honor the past while also looking ahead to the future?
Right. And in this case, it's even more complicated because it's not just Derek and Dr. Atanga.
What do you mean?
We also hear from other Ambazonians who are chiming in with their own perspectives.
There's not a two-sided debate.
No, it's not.
It's a whole spectrum of opinions.
Exactly. It's a whole tapestry of opinions.
So what are some of the other ideas that people are putting forward?
Well, for example, one person suggests a kind of hybrid approach,
Okay.
merging the community-based organization with a unified front.
No, it's a bit of both worlds.
Yeah, trying to take the best of both and create something new.
And are there any other completely different approaches that people are suggesting?
Some people are advocating for a more revolutionary approach.
What do you mean by that?
Less focus on social media activism and more emphasis on, covert operations secrecy.
Oh, wow.
A little bit more cloak and dagger.
Yeah, so more underground movement.
Right, and this highlights that within any movement, you're going to have differing viewpoints on how best to fight for that cause.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I imagine in this situation where the stakes are so high and the situation is so complex,
Yes.
those differences in opinion can become very heated.
Oh, absolutely. And it leads to some really fascinating back and forths in these discussions.
So how does Derek respond to all these different ideas being thrown around?
He keeps coming back to the importance of community mobilization for long-term sustainability.
Okay.
And he even points to the Palestinian BDS movement as a model for how effective this can be.
That's a great comparison.
Mm.
I mean, the BDS movement has been incredibly successful in raising awareness and putting pressure on Israel.
And they've managed to do that despite facing a lot of opposition.
So what does Derek see as the biggest takeaways from the BDS movement?
He emphasizes that any system that they create needs to be designed to prevent individual self-interest from harming the movement as a whole.
So again, it comes back to accountability.
Exactly. He's calling for real accountability where actions have consequences.
It's like he's saying you could have the most amazing structure in the world, but if people are just out for themselves,
Right.
it's not going to work.
It's all going to fall apart.
And it seems like he's really learned that lesson from past experiences.
He has, and that's why he's so insistent on building something different this time, something that can withstand those pressures.
So he's not just talking, he's actually trying to put forward a plan to make it happen.
He suggests forming what he calls a framework committee to develop a completely new roadmap for the Ambazonian struggle.
Wow, so he's putting his money where his mouth is.
He is, and to ensure that this committee is solely motivated by the collective good, he suggests that members should pledge to never seek elected office within the Ambazonian movement.
So he's trying to eliminate any personal ambition from the equation.
Exactly. He wants to make it completely about Ambazonia, not about individual careers.
It's a bold idea, and I can see why he thinks that's necessary given his past experiences.
Yeah, he really wants to create a clean slate to break away from past practices and start fresh.
But it's also interesting that he keeps referencing the Palestinian BDS movement.
It is.
It seems like he sees it as a model that works, but is also adaptable.
Right. He's not saying just copy and paste what they've done, but to learn from their successes and their failures.
And figure out what lessons can be applied to the Ambazonian context.
Exactly. Don't reinvent the wheel, but customize it to fit your terrain.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So we've got Derek pushing for a total overhaul, Dr. Atanga advocating for sticking with the LGA,
Right?
and a bunch of other voices chiming in with their own ideas.
That's a lot to process.
It is a lot to process, but it seems like the one thing that everyone agrees on is that the current way of doing things isn't working.
That's true.
There's a real hunger for change, even if they disagree on what that change should look like.
And that hunger for change is palpable in these discussions.
Yeah, it's like they're all saying, we need to do something different, we need to find a better way. And that shared sense of urgency, that's what's driving this whole conversation.
It is, and it's what makes it so compelling to listen to, even if you're not directly involved in the Ambazonian struggle.
Right, because it speaks to this universal desire for freedom, for self-determination, for a better future.
Absolutely, and it raises all these questions about what it takes to build a successful movement, how to overcome internal divisions, how to harness the power of a global diaspora.
And ultimately, how to translate ideas into action.
Exactly how to move beyond the talk and into the realm of real, tangible change.
And that's what we're going to explore further as we continue to dive into these fascinating discussions.
Yes, because there's so much more to unpack here.
There's so much more to unpack.
So much more.
And we're just getting started.
We are.
So buckle up, folks. It's going to be a wild ride.
It is. So we've explored Derek's vision and Dr. Atanga's perspective.
Right.
But remember that post that was titled, How Mumble Jumbo Conquered Our Struggle?
Oh, yeah, that one really stuck with me.
It was pretty provocative, right?
It felt like a real wake-up call.
It did.
Like it was calling out this tendency to get so caught up in talk
Right.
that no real action is being taken.
Exactly.
So what do they mean by that? What is this mumble jumbo?
Well, it seems like they're critiquing this culture of, empty promises
Okay.
and rhetoric that prioritizes appearances over actual impact.
So it's like talking a big game, but not actually delivering.
Exactly. And it's a danger for any movement,
Yeah.
especially one that operates so much online.
Right, because it's easy to feel like you're making a difference just by posting and sharing.
Right, but are you actually doing the hard work
Yeah.
of building a sustainable organization?
It's like that saying, talk is cheap.
Exactly.
You can have all the good intentions, but if
Yeah.
you're not taking action,
Right.
nothing's going to change.
And that's what this author is saying. They're saying move beyond the mumble jumbo
Okay.
and focus on developing a clear strategy.
So less talk, more action.
Exactly. But it's also about being strategic, about really thinking about how to achieve those goals.
So it's not just blindly running into action.
Yeah.
It's about being thoughtful.
It's about thinking like a chess player, not a checkers player.
I like that analogy.
It's about thinking long term.
Right.
And they also talk about this idea of fall-safe frameworks.
What did they mean by that?
They're talking about building mechanisms into the system
Okay.
that prevent individuals from hijacking the movement
Oh,
or acting against the collective good.
So safeguards.
Exactly. Safeguards to make sure that the movement is resilient.
So it can withstand those internal and external pressures?
Exactly, because power can corrupt.
Right. And good intentions aren't always enough.
And sometimes you need those structures in place.
To prevent people from going astray.
Exactly.
So it's a tall order,
It is.
but it's also a necessary one.
Absolutely, if they want to be successful in the long term.
So it's about balancing that idealism with pragmatism.
Right.
Believing in people's good intentions.
But also being realistic.
But also knowing that things can go wrong.
Exactly.
So this mumble jumbo critique, it's like a reality check.
It is.
It's acknowledging the problems,
Yeah.
but also pushing people towards solutions.
And speaking of solutions, we heard a lot of different ideas in these discussions.
Yeah, we did.
About how to move forward.
So besides the LGA,
Yeah.
what are some of the other options that people are proposing?
Well, one idea that keeps coming up is this idea of creating a more unified front.
Okay, so instead of having all these separate groups working independently,
Right.
they would come together under a single banner.
Exactly. A more cohesive and coordinated movement.
What would that look like in practice?
Well, there are different ideas about how to structure that.
Oh.
Some people suggest creating like an umbrella organization
Yeah, okay.
that oversees all the different groups.
I see.
While others propose a more decentralized model
Okay.
where each group keeps its autonomy, but they all agree to work together towards the same goals.
So is that classic debate between centralization and decentralization?
It is, and it comes up in so many different movements.
It does.
And there are pros and cons to each approach.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what are the potential benefits of a unified front?
Well, one of the biggest benefits is increased efficiency.
Okay.
By working together, the groups can pool their resources, share their expertise.
Right. So less duplication of effort.
Exactly. And that could lead to a more strategic approach.
So they can leverage their collective strengths.
Right. It's like that saying, 2 heads are better than 1.
Exactly. Or in this case, maybe 100 heads are better than 1.
Right.
And I imagine it would also help them to present a more unified message.
Absolutely. Instead of having all these different voices speaking at once,
Yeah.
they can speak with one voice and amplify their message.
So it's about creating a brand,
Yeah,
a recognizable identity,
exactly. And that can be really powerful.
especially on the international stage.
Right, because it helps them cut through the noise.
Grab people's attention.
Exactly. And it can make the Ambazonian struggle more relatable to a global audience.
So it's about telling a story,
It is.
creating a narrative that people can understand and connect with.
Exactly.
But what about the downsides? Are there any risks to creating a unified front?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
One of the biggest risks is the potential for conflict.
Right. because you're bringing together all these different groups
with different perspectives.
and different personalities.
Exactly. And managing all of that can be really challenging.
So it's like herding cats.
It can be.
You can get them all moving in the same general direction.
But there's always that chance that one of them is going to go rogue.
Exactly. So it requires strong leadership,
Absolutely.
clear communication,
And a willingness to compromise.
and even then, there's no guarantee that everyone will be happy.
Exactly. So it's a delicate balancing act.
It is finding that sweet spot between unity and diversity.
Right, between cohesion and autonomy.
And that's something that they're going to have to grapple with very carefully
They will.
if they decide to go down this path.
Because the stakes are high.
They are. And the potential consequences are significant.
Absolutely.
So they need to weigh the benefits against the risks
And make sure they have the right structures in place.
to manage those challenges.
Right, because it's like building a house.
Okay.
You need a strong foundation
A solid framework,
and a clear blueprint.
but you also need to be flexible
Yes, adaptable.
because things change.
They do.
Circumstances change.
And you need to be able to adjust your plans.
Exactly. So it's not just about the structure itself.
Right.
It's about the values
And principles.
that underpin that structure
It's about creating a culture
of transparency,
accountability.
shared responsibility.
Exactly. And that's something that has to come from within.
Right. It can't be imposed from the outside,
It has to be a conscious effort
from everyone involved,
to prioritize the collective good.
over their own self-interest.
Right. It's about building trust,
Shared ownership,
recognizing that everyone has a role to play
and that everyone contributes,
to both the successes and the failures.
and that by working together,
They can create something stronger.
than any one person could achieve alone.
That's the power of collective action.
It is.
And it's something that this movement is really grappling with.
It is, and it's not easy
It's not.
because they're facing a lot of challenges.
They are.
They've got a powerful adversary,
Self-flicks environment.
internal divisions.
It would be easy to give up.
It would be.
But what's remarkable is their determination.
Their resilience.
They're not giving up.
They're not backing down.
And that gives me hope.
Me too. It's like they're saying, we know it's tough,
But we're in it for the long haul.
and we're not going to stop until we achieve our goal.
And that's inspiring.
It's a testament to the power of hope.
The power of a shared dream.
And that's something that we can all learn from,
Absolutely. No matter what our own personal struggles are.
because it reminds us that even in the face of overwhelming odds,
The human spirit can prevail.
it can. And that's a powerful message to carry with us.
But there's another aspect of this discussion that we need to explore.
Okay.
The human element.
Right. Because it's easy to get caught up in the mechanics of it all.
The structures.
The strategies.
But ultimately, this is about people.
It is.
Their hopes, their fears, their dreams.
And their sacrifices.
And that's what we're going to explore next.
We are going to delve into the personal stories,
The individual experiences.
heart of this struggle.
And I think that's where we're really going to see the true power of this movement.
I agree.
So we've talked a lot about the big picture stuff.
Yeah, the structure.
The strategies.
The global implications.
But what really struck me in these discussions
Yeah.
was the raw emotion,
The passion.
the sense of urgency.
Yeah, you can really feel the personal investment people have in this fight.
Absolutely. It's not just an intellectual debate for them.
No, it's deeply personal.
These are their lives,
Their families.
their future. And it makes this whole conversation about how to organize the diaspora
Right.
so much more compelling.
Because it's not just theoretical.
It's real.
And the stakes are incredibly high.
They are. And you see that in the way people talk about the need for change,
The frustration.
the fear of repeating past mistakes,
It's clear that they've been hurt,
let down,
but they're still fighting.
still pushing for a better way forward.
And it makes that mumble-jumbo critique even more poignant.
Right. It's not just about empty rhetoric,
It's about the pain of broken promises.
the feeling of being betrayed.
And that's why this call for accountability is so powerful.
It is, because it's about more than just efficiency.
It's about restoring trust,
Making sure that people's sacrifices aren't in vain,
that their voices are heard.
that their contributions actually matter.
So it's about healing.
Rebuilding that sense of community.
That's been fractured by past disappointments,
Exactly. And you see glimpses of that healing in these discussions.
where they talk about forgiveness,
Reconciliation,
acknowledging past mistakes.
but not letting them define the future.
It's like they're saying, we've been through a lot,
We've made mistakes.
but we're not giving up on each other.
And we're not giving up on Ambazonia.
And that's what gives me hope.
Me too.
That even in the midst of all this turmoil,
There's still this resilience,
this belief in the power of collective action,
this unwavering commitment to the dream of a free Ambazonia.
It's inspiring.
It is to see people facing such incredible challenges.
And still finding the strength to keep fighting.
To keep believing.
To keep working towards a better future.
And it reminds us that even in the darkest of times,
even when the odds seem insurmountable,
the human spirit can prevail.
That desire for freedom, for justice, for dignity
is a powerful force
that can overcome even the most entrenched systems of oppression.
And it's not just about Ambazonia.
You're right. This struggle resonates with so many other movements.
Around the world.
Anyone who's ever felt marginalized,
oppressed,
denied their basic rights.
It speaks to that universal yearning for self-determination.
The right to chart your own destiny.
To live in a world where everyone's voice is heard.
And everyone has the opportunity to reach their full potential.
And that's what makes this deep dive so valuable.
I agree.
It's not just about a specific conflict.
It's about the dynamics of social change.
The challenges of building a movement.
The importance of accountability.
And the resilience of the human spirit.
And it's a journey that each listener can take with us.
Reflecting on their own experiences.
Their own struggles.
Their own hopes for a better world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Ambazonian diaspora's struggle, I'm left with this sense of awe.
At their courage.
Their resilience.
Their unwavering commitment.
And I'm left with this renewed sense of hope.
Me too.
This reminder that even when things seem impossible,
people can come together.
They can organize.
They can challenge the status quo.
And they can create a more just and equitable world.
For themselves and for generations to come.
And that's a powerful message to carry with us.
It is.
It can inspire us to take action in our own lives.
To stand up for what we believe in.
To work towards a future where everyone has the opportunity to live in freedom and dignity.
Absolutely. The Ambazonian diaspora struggle is a testament to the power of the human spirit.
It is.
And it's a story that deserves to be heard,
shared,
and learned from.